name is new. It's fine. It just stands for Google Summer of Code. So what Google Summer of Code is, what does it consist of, what's the process, or whatever it is, the speaker for today's event would be talking about it in depth. And the speaker for today's event is Arpit Vaghela. A little bit about him. He is a fourth year BTech ICT student at Ahmedabad University. So he's just our senior. And so this is not a very formal event per se. He was selected for the Google Summer of Code last year, that is GSoC 21, and he was selected as an open source contributor for the organization called Open Minded, where he worked on the project called integrating pandas to PySwift. If all these sounds these are heavy jargons for you, don't worry. I'm sure Arpit will talk a lot about it in the entire session. He was also a full stack developer intern at PedalsUp, and also a front end engineer intern at CuratePad. So that's about it. You can, it's all, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Atman, for that lovely introduction. So yeah, let me just share my screen and
Yes.
you're ready to go.
And also just just before you start, so once the speaker session is done, or maybe Arpit, once he's done talking about Google Summer of Code and the process, and I think we have a Q&A session with him, right? So Vinay has pasted the Q&A link in the chat box, where you can anonymously ask your questions, or also not anonymously. If you're someone who wants your question to not be anonymous, you could do that too. So feel free to just shoot your questions there, and remember, like, there is no such thing as a wrong question or a bad question. So anything and everything related to Google Summer of Code, feel free to shoot it there. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So like we are discussing Google Summer of Code, which is obviously in summer. So first of all, like the main core of Google Summer of Code is to have like open source contributions, right? So first let's discuss about what is open source. So basically, like when you have, like, there are a lot of, so when you build a very sophisticated software or a library, you have many simple components that are built, and the sophisticated part is built on top of it. So that is like our normal thing, how we use like abstraction in our coding, right? So for that, what we do is like we have, like, there are basic necessity software and components which are used across like many organizations. Now, if you consider that, if what if like all organizations build this software, that is basic components individually, so that is like basically like creating the same thing, like reinventing the wheel. So to avoid that and to promote a more like in general contribution, and making sure whatever that components that they build is used and is usable across many communities, uh, people have started the open source mission, where they try to bring communities together, and they try to develop things that are used across across many organizations. And so that is basically open source. So what I guess most of you are like, once they hear open source, they are mostly about like GitHub, which is true. Like many of the softwares are hosted there, but there are more organizations as well, like Git, those organize their organization. Okay, so Google Summer of Code, what's the mission? So the mission is like pretty simple. Like we have such softwares, right? So the softwares are not backed by like a private company that is going to gain from it. Okay, so they are like open projects, and who develop these projects are community. So community is everyone. So we want these projects do want us to add up and like move the project forward. So that is why like these organizations are always looking for contributions. So so there are like open source organizations that need such contributors, and it is beneficial to all the entire community. And to promote that, we have Google Summer of Code. Google started to Google Summer of Code, where they find like they have students, they give them a stipend and so on, and they those students to the organizations, and they help the organizations grow. So there is nothing gained by Google from it except increase in the open source contribution, right? I hope things are clear so far. So you get like, so in Google Summer of Code, you get like around 12 weeks of contribution. So it is like 10 weeks of contribution. Plus there are some like pre-selection and post-selection things that goes on. Okay. So these are the numbers that Google Summer of Code has reached for so far. There are like a lot of students, mentors, and like a lot of lines of code. So you can see like this is a lot of code, right? And a lot of organizations have joined. Okay, so domain, instead of looking domain here, we can see the domain on the Google Summer of Code website itself. Okay, this may take some time. Yeah, okay. So these are like the all the domains that are there. Okay, so what okay, let me just first a bit forward. Okay. So basically what happens is like in the timeline, first the Google Summer of Code is an individual platform itself. Like there are people who are working with the Google Summer of Code itself, right? So then their job is to connect the organizations with the students. So the organizations are registered, and they uh, put forward all the projects that they want for their organization. And then we have like student who apply and try to secure a project and work on that, and they are connected to the organization, right? Okay, so like I hope that is like clear. So here are like some of the organizations. These are like last year's organization. This year's organization will be announced around like 7th of March. Okay, so there are, you can see a lot of organizations. And the thing is, like, one thing I want you guys to be a bit, like, it is obvious, but still I'll just say it. Like if you are say working in Django, I hope like most of you know Django. So in Django, you are working on Django rather than with Django. So for Django, the skills required for Django will rather be like Python rather than knowing Django, right? So such that if you are working for say PyTorch, then the skills required is not to use the PyTorch, but it is rather to contribute to PyTorch. So that will be like in C++ and CUDA and so on. So they have like a lot of projects in here. So you can see like these are the projects that they were suggested and they were picked up. The suggested projects are more than this. They are not limited to 3 4, but it will be rather be a list of 10 or 12. And some of the well-known organizations such as Python has like sub projects within it. So here is like for the Python. Okay, let me just take the ideation. So Python basically has many like sub contribution, and they have like, for Python they will have like SymPy and so on. So there are like a bunch of organization and a lot of projects that you have to pick up from, and the idea is to find the right one for you. So the thing is, you have to first like try to figure out what you want to contribute to, like what is your plus point, whether you are good with like OS or with like some programming language with security and so on. So these are like, you can search this thing and you have to like shortlist those things into very narrow part, right? Okay, so you can see like we have a lot of domain in here and open mind. So next, first, before you understand like what is necessary, so to get selected, you will have to like submit a proposal to the organization, which is like selected by the mentors. So after you get selected, first to understand what the proposal has to carry out, first try to understand what is expected of you once you get selected. So once you get selected, you have a project and you're trying to finish and contribute something to the organization within a fixed limit of time. Okay, so so you have like 3 weeks for the community bonding, where you figure things out, whether the proposal and the milestone that you have set is achievable or not, and if it requires some kind of changes, then the mentor will suggest you those changes and so on. So then you have like a coding period where you actually contribute, and you have like a weekly or bi-weekly meetings with your mentor, and you try to keep on with the progress. Now this is sort of the and then there is evaluation, where the summer of code does not like involve in this. The thing is, you like tell about like what your contribution are, and the mentor will tell you whether you have passed the summer of code and you will get the stipend or not, right? So there are two evaluation. One is like mid evaluation, where it is like exactly after 5 weeks, and then the final evaluation, which is in 10 weeks. And then at the end, you have like PR and all submitted, and you have like the final report that is just a formality for the GSoC. And then they will mostly, if you like mentors good review, then you get the pass or the fail if you are not at all involved in the contribution. So one thing that you might be like, okay, what if I like over promise in a proposal? Then it is not a big problem. You have like 3 weeks to figure out whether it is achievable or not, right? And every week or two, you are actually interacting with your mentor and showing that like this is my progress. And he's a human as well. Okay, so he understands like, okay, these are the problems that you are facing. He will also help you with your problems, and he will be like a guide to you, like he's a mentor, so he will mentor you throughout the entire process, and he will be also the one who is judging you. So that is like you have a plus, like there is someone who is already on your side and who is also going to give you grade. So that's a double plus. And so the thing is, you have to ensure that you are actually contributing, and whatever your work is noted by your mentor, right? So that is like easy thing, because if you are actually working, then you can easily prove that, right? So this is sort of the post thing. A lot of things is you are going to work with GitHub, right? And so organizations, and you will have a lot of branches. Okay, so and you will have to work with those branches and forks and so on. So you will require a very good Git skills. That is, you have to like mostly, I would suggest you to look up like how to add remote and so on, and PR, and there is like CI testing and so on, right? So okay, so these are like my contributions, and we'll come back to this after, and we discuss like, okay, so these are like what happens before. Now we know like what happens after the selection. So after the selection, you are expected to work on a project. Now before the selection, where you are supposed to like submit a proposal for a project, you have to convince the mentors that you will be able to fulfill that, right? Okay, so how can you prove that? uh, so firstly, the thing is, you have like for the projects, you will have just a title, right? The first thing for you is to like, after the very first thing, like the step zero is to like screen down the organizations and the project, and try to come up find the best projects for you, where you can actually contribute and you understand things. So once you have that title, you have to like understand deeply like what the title is about and how you can contribute to that organization, right? So once you have done that, you will like, before you write the proposal, you have some understanding. Then you start communicating with your mentors, and you try to figure out, okay, this is what I have understood, this is what I'm planning to do, this is my draft, can you like cross check whether I am on the right track, and whether I can finish it, like whatever I have written is like what you expect from the project. Okay, so that will be your first thing. along with that, you have to prove the organization that you are actually capable of doing that, right? So when I was applying for this GSoC like last year, so you can see I took first, before this I worked with uh, one of my colleague, and like before this, and that was my very first issue which I actually contributed. Like for you, most of the issues you have like good first issue tags, you can pick one of those and you can like start contributing. So most of the organization have like discussion forums and like places where they add in collaborator. Okay, this is not something that is like set up just for GShock. These are like every organization has its own. So my organization use Slack for it. So I picked one. I had we had like weekly meetings and so on. So I started like joining those meeting and trying to understand like what sort of things are happening there. And this was the like the very first I picked the issue. I picked the project. I finished the first issue, like which is not here, but I solved a first issue. Then the next step that I did is like I formed the draft proposal, I submitted it, and to prove that I am actually capable of doing that project, this was the PR that I added. So this is like just a very small part of the original whole project, right? So I added the support for like categorical pandas categorical and JSON normalization to the repo, and you can see like it is at like test what tests were passing and what were failing, and like I try to fix things, and this eventually got merged into the repo itself, right? So like I think the necessary skills that you will need to have is like you will have to have like a good sense of like and the development and environment that they are in, and there will always be like actions and like test actions and so on. So these are like all the tests that are running, and uh, the test action, like just to get you familiarized with, like CI and test actions are just commands run on like a remote system, right? So they are just like, if you open this up, like I know I found these things like alienated at first, but like as I looked in, so if you look at this job, then these are the things that have been run, right? So if you have like things set up, you can then run things after that. So this is mentioned in a YAML file in the .github folder, and this is what happens when you run it. Like these are the commands that are run, like pre-commit is getting installed here, then the Python is installed here, right? And then this is the last thing. Okay, this is not a good example because it is just installing Python and it is getting out. So this is running the pre-commit here. Pre-commit is basically a linting for PyTorch. So you will have something for that as well. So you can also run pre-commit yourself. Like so you can just do like pre-commit dot. So that is like, now you know, you have to like Google things first, like okay, how is like pre-commit, how can I use pre-commit? Or they will also have a developer instructions like okay, this is how you set your system so that you can develop to the organization. So that will be building, testing and everything. They will have some sort of documentation. You have to go through all of that before you can finish the first issue, like first good issue that you want to contribute to. So this is like you need to have a good sense of what the CI is doing, what sort of commands are run. So it is like simple, but you will still have to like figure things out in the basics. So like don't get demotivated from that. Like just give it some time. You will get to know like it is just running the commands on your command line itself. So once you have like that sort of, so like my first issue, like you can understand like my first PR took like around a month to merge because I didn't understand all those things, but eventually I did, and I was able to like contribute to it, right? So then I had like So this was like the first issue. Like it showed like I wanted to contribute to like integrating pandas, and I had a PR that integrated some part of pandas. So this is like sort of you can. So this is like a plus point that I'm giving you. Like you can do something like that to say, okay, you have to first finish a good issue. Then the second thing is you do something like this, and that will be like totally convinced. If you are a mentor and you see someone who is working on the project itself before even getting selected, then you are like pretty much confident, okay, he has the potential and he can like obviously do it. So that is like uh, adds to your chances of getting selected. Okay. So then like once you are in, then everything is like easy. Okay. So that was all. So over my 10 12 weeks of 10 weeks of working in open mind, I had like 14 PRs and like got like, so you can see like this is a bunch of list that I got to merge. This is like a very I would say a very positive experience because you get to learn a lot, right? And it is like you are like actually working the contributing to an organization. The structure that they have is almost like the best you can development experience that you can have. Like it is as good as working on a very good firm, and maybe in some sense even better. Okay, so this is basically what you need to like get ready, and I'll summarize it once again in the end, and that's all from my side.
Um, Thanks a lot. That was very much insightful. We got to know each and every the parts
Yes.
of the entire process and the blocks. So I think before we move to Q&A, I sort of have a random question. And so if you were to reflect on your entire journey, if you were to reflect on your entire process again, and what is that one thing that you would tell your 2021 self should have done and should have kept in mind?
So the hardest part of get the thing is like it is almost like everywhere, and it is a universal fact. So
Right,
everyone remember it.
right.
The hardest part is to get in.
Yeah,
Okay.
agreed. Right,
So I started it like pretty late. I had like 21 or 25 days to like screen down the organization, pick the project, contribute to it, and like write the proposal. So I guess the thing that I would say myself is to like 2021 myself was like, please, like at least you had start early, you might have like a better proposal.
right.
The idea is like once you screen down the organization and pick up the projects, right? Uh, like you have a
Hmm.
lot of projects and a lot of organizations, so it will take around like 4 or 5 days to get that thing done, right?
Right.
And you have to find the projects that you can actually contribute to, like you
Hmm.
understand that project, right? So that is like first important thing to get there. Then as I said, you have to try to first like finish a first issue, get familiar with that entire development environment, how they are testing things, set up those things on your PC, on your system, and like try to contribute to a good first issue. Then
Right.
start working on your proposal, right?
Right.
Figure out what you are trying to do, write up some proposal, try something. This is like a bonus. I got that like the my first PR for the contribution was like
Hmm.
even before I got selected, and that was I guess that was the win for me.
Right.
That made thing possible. So figure out what sort small part of it you can like
Mhm.
try to contribute right now itself.
Right. So in a sense that not just do it just for the sake of GSoC, but to actually have that
Yes.
interest, and something that even after GSoC ends, you're gonna get back and you're gonna keep doing. So just not have that mentality key.
Yes. So I think if you like look up like this 3 or 4 PRs that I did was
Right,
between getting selected,
right.
was before getting selected and after the proposal. like when the time that takes they take for like selecting the people, right? So
Right,
these are
right.
like just random. Even after I got selected, I had like 3 weeks, and I thought like I will start contributing after this 3 community bonding period. After that, I will start contributing. So some issue, like I thought this is just like adding doc string, and this was basically my chance to understand those things,
Mm.
like the library itself. So these are like just writing those dot strings. In like in case you don't know, like before the functions and the classes, you have like these 3 codes, and that is called doc string. So I just added doc string to entire sub module to understand those module, and like it is a win-win. So even like this
Right,
kind of
right.
contribution can be advantageous as well.
Agreed. Agreed. Makes sense. So I think more about the process and everything, we'll get a chance to talk about it again in the Q&A. So if you'd like, I'll share my screen and maybe we can
Yeah.
get started with the. Just a second. Yeah.
Okay, I can see like there are people asking in the
Right.
chat itself, like, do we get a participating certification of GSoC? Yes, you do. Uh,
Right.
so you have to. So the formalities are you have to create a link Google account, and you have to, like, earlier you had to prove that you are a student, but I
Mm.
guess now it is not necessary. So I don't know. There might be some proof that you have to upload.
So by a Google account, as in a Google developer profile, or a
No,
Gmail
no,
account, as in
just a
just a Gmail.
Gmail
Okay,
account
in
so
that
that they can
sense.
reach you
Right.
out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. 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 Maybe we'll just take the chat question and then move to
Okay, so the one more question is, how much of the technical knowledge should one have to make a meaningful open source contribution? So in case of just making open source contribution, it is not necessary to have that kind of technical knowledge. You can like add documentation, you can work on documentation, fixing things. Like if you are using something, like, okay, you can see like there are other tabs as well on GitHub that says issues and so on, so you can also create those.
right.
Okay, and that is also a contribution. So you can sort of like use things and you can report that back, so that is a contribution, right? You can even suggest like these are the changes I want, even that is a contribution. And but if you say specifically to GSoC, then you will need to have some sort of technical knowledge for the project that you are going to work on.
Right. Right, right. It's insightful. I think hope that is answered. So yeah, so moving to the Q&A. Yes. So let's go on with the highest votes. So how to prepare for GSoC? What level of problems are beneficial for projects in GSoC, and what is the value of GSoC? Maybe you could take it one by one. So how does one prepare for GSoC?
So like I said, one,
Yeah.
you have to go for all the process, like screening
Right.
down the
Right.
organization, picking up the project and so on. You get 2 months for that. Okay, like
Mhm.
if you are on time, you will get 2 months for that. So
Hmm.
don't do the mistake that I did and like start early.
Right.
What level of problems are beneficial for projects in GShock? Like I don't completely get it.
It is based on that hardness of the problem, that is hard, difficult, easy, or
Okay.
medium.
So this is something like last year, what GShock did is that they cut off the time to as a half-time contribution instead of a full-time contribution. So the difference is like your projects had like a first they had like 60 hours of contribution. Now they had like 30 hours of contributions. Okay. So
Hmm.
based on that, you are expected to do a 30 hours of work throughout the week. Okay, sorry, it was like 2040. So you are supposed to do 20 hours of work every week.
Right.
So that is sort of how the organization and the mentor themselves suggest those projects, right? So they know like this will take this amount of time for them to understand the problem and work on it. And within the 10 week, you are also, they take into consideration that you might not be familiar with things. Okay,
Mhm.
so if you get too quick, then you can mostly finish it within a shorter time. And if you are even not able to finish it within that time, but you are able to contribute sufficiently that the mentor accepts, okay, he has actually contributed, then you are still passed and like eligible for like finishing the GSoC, and you will get the certificate.
Right. So what I think is that in a nutshell, that there is no proper metric that this is easy, this is medium, this is hard, because
Yeah.
everything, a lot of depends from technology to technology, from framework to framework, from project to project. Since
Yes.
it's an open source a lot of open source organizations come, so each open source organization has a different technology, they require a different skill set. So we cannot put a metric to it that it will be 50% hard, it will be 70% hard, it will be 20% hard. But I think, as this Arpit rightly point out, that it will, yes, require a technical foundation, or basically a
Yes.
technical understanding
So
of what is happening in the
yeah.
project.
So I guess the important thing here is to like pick the project that you can actually contribute to, that you are confident that, okay, I can like contribute to this and I can understand the thing.
Right.
It might like, maybe there is like, okay, you can do a so I did, what I did is like, I started like, okay, what language I want to contribute to, what language I'm comfortable with. I had like Python, and I knew I wanted to go with like AI and ML, but I wasn't that strong with it, so I thought like, let's not pick that. So I picked Python. I choose what are the Python projects available out there. I tried to understand what I'm familiar with. So I had some use case with Panda, so that is why I picked Pandas, because I knew some part of Pandas, and I thought, okay, but uh, this is, picking up the project was completely different. Then I like understood the, like, okay, this is the problem, why they want to integrate this thing into SIP, and so on. So I don't know if you guys want to like hear that technical details, why, what is integrated and so on, but I understood that what they mean. That might take some time, it might be a different from what you expect of the project, but if you can understand that, then you can still go for it, right? And I went for it. So,
Right. Yeah.
and what is the value of GSoC? I guess like I could say like the GSoC was the best experience I had. Like I grew like communication skill over that. I had like became a good Python developer. I can play around with versions, and I know how to make packages and so on. I learned that from GSoC. So yeah, so that is like, you learn a lot, you grow a lot, and even when you are applying for jobs, having a GSoC experience helps. Uh, I didn't have the chance to try it myself, but I have heard like people are having positive response if they have like GSoC experience.
GSoC experience, right. This was inspiring,
Yeah.
inspiring indeed. So moving on to the next one. As a beginner, how should I start contributing to open source, and how do I know that this is the right project slash issue for me to contribute?
Uh, yeah. So as I don't know how like I will answer it in like two perspective. If you are like completely new to contributing, and we are just talking about like open source contribution, then you have to like look for, you will always, in every organization and every repository, you will have a good first issue tag in the issues section. Filter that out, try to read through things, read a couple of things, see if you can find a issue that is not picked by anyone. And okay, let me tell you, while you are working for your proposals, things are going to be very competitive. So make sure you, when you, if you fix on like working on some issue, let everyone know. Like every issue has like, you can comment on those things, and like keep the thread running. So you like post like, okay, I understand the issue and I would like to work on it, and then start working, right? Not saying like wait for the approval, but like right there, so that no one else picks it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is like, you can like read through the issues, and then you can understand like, okay, what's the problem, do I understand the problem, can I figure out what file change will I have to do to fix this thing. Then if you can come up with an answer to that, then then you know like this is the right one to contribute to. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you just pick, okay, like I think I understand like 20, 50, 20, 30% of this thing, let me just try it out, and you will like figure out things in a way like what engineer normally does.
Now, what if say there is an issue which I feel okay, boss, ये issue तो मेरे से हो जाएगा and I can do it very easily. And when I actually start looking at the issue and it's not, I'm not able to solve it, then what do I do?
So
I
if
mean,
you know, okay, so my policy is like 20% of the work, like the 20-80 rule, right?
right.
Okay, so the hard part is the rest 20 part, and you will have to
Yeah.
spend 80% of the time working on that.
Working on that, right?
Yeah, so sometimes I just like, okay, I like I get frustrated by the problems that I have, and this is how like even many of the organizations work. Like you get a problem, you don't know what the solution is, but you stick with the problem.
Right.
That's the solution. You stick with the problem.
Right.
The more you dig in, the more you understand, and the more you are closer to the solution.
Solution. Fair. Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
complete sense. Yeah. And also, I guess that the open source community is also in general very welcoming in that sense.
Yes. So like, I mean, these are like the best people that I believe like they were like sent by heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they are like very welcoming, and they are very supporting. They understand what you are doing and what you are going through. So so Raj asked what is like 80-20 rule.
Right.
So the thing is like 20% of your efforts results in 80% of your gain, and 80% of the efforts result in the last 20%. So like just Google it. It is like something like that.
Right.
So you will have to need to just work on 20%, like very less amount of work is required to show great achievement, and to go beyond that it takes more efforts. Like that is sort of the gist of the rule.
Right. Okay, so moving on. How to find a proper organization and how much can one contribute to open source with just basic knowledge about programming? I think we had a fair discussion on it, but still, maybe you'd like
Yes.
some more.
So yeah, so I think you one thing is you can look in a two. I guess the thing is don't stick with the organization, right?
Right.
Even if you pick an organization, they might have different tasks. Okay, the organization might be working on say AI, but their project might be something like they need like a something with website or JavaScript or something like that.
Right.
That is possible, right? So if you are like somewhat inclined to picking up a good project, like try to look into the organization. But don't think because of the like the work of an organization is in a field does not mean they will have work in the other subdomains, right?
Right.
So instead of looking at organization, I will say like open the organization and look at the projects first.
Right.
So you can sort of, instead of focusing on narrowing down the organization and then narrow down on the project, I would say open up the projects as well and like narrow down the project itself rather than adding the organization hierarchy there.
Right. So basically looking at the tech stack instead of the
Yes.
agenda.
So tech stack and what you are going to work on, like what are the projects that you are supposed to work on, what project you are going to work on,
Right.
will give you more insight rather than just picking an organization.
Fair. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. So so how to be consistent at practicing and following the development path between all these assignments, projects, exam and quizzes? I mean, this question is
summer at the summer there, man.
The real deal for especially for BTech students.
So luckily the GSoC is in summer. So you get like the 3-4 months of summer breaks, and that is when things happen. But I think like if you are going to like, okay, you cannot actually always stick to the milestones that you have. Okay, so you have to like, okay, you have to give in the hours.
Right.
I guess like that is the main thing that you have to focus on. Like instead of thinking on like finishing a task, you can sort of focus on giving the hours.
Okay.
Right. So that is, you are also like justifying yourself that I'm actually whatever like GSoC has told me to work, I'm actually working that hours. Like, okay, so that is how you justify the thing. And if you give in the hours, I think it is pretty much easy to achieve those milestones. Some might be hard, some might lack out, and you might not reach the complete target that you might have set, but that is okay. You will still clear the GSoC.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but that does not mean you get the chance to slack. Okay, so
right.
put in the hours. Yeah.
So I think I also understand one thing from this question that I would sort of like to ask. So what this question sort of means for me and is that, see, so the timeline as you shared and everything will soon get started, right?
Yes.
So and you said that, okay, if you want a good fair shot at it, that means you already start contributing, right?
Yeah.
So let's say now our semester is also going on, we have started getting assignments and there'll soon be quizzes and whatnot, and in the peak period of all the assignments and projects is when
Yeah,
the
you will
proposal
have like
timeline is, right? So how does one dabble? I mean, obviously I understand this ideology that, okay, you have to put in the hours, but still, how did you manage that? I mean, any
so. So when I got into this, it's like I traded my assignment projects, and like I was at that time I was like the I was managing the Ingenium website as well as the ICT events and all that,
right.
and like it was sort of done. So I thought like I traded at the point. I just delegated everything. Like, okay, you guys are there. I'm trusting you guys.
Right.
Okay, and like I focused on this thing. So I mean, like college is very confusing and like chaotic times. You will have everything coming in, like and most of them will matter, some don't, and you are not sure what will and what won't. So like enjoy the chaos.
True. That's very wise. I mean,
Yeah.
what should a student do who wants to follow a development path? Um,
Yeah. So like I said, GSoC, every organization, like okay, like first you have to understand what the organization has. Like, okay, now I'm giving you very different picture here. So in an organization, you have a project, okay, like not saying as a GSoC project, but this is like a repository, a library or something like that. Now you have thousands of people working on that project, and you are and a million of people depending on that project.
yeah.
And as a maintainer, you have to make sure that everything works fine, right?
Yeah.
So this is not only the case for that open source organization, this is also the same case where like private companies and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the what I showed you, like I showed you actions and like integration test and linting test and everything, all those tests and like millions of fork. I told you like it is important to get understanding of like the GitHub and all those things. So that all things ensures that whatever the project you have, no matter whoever works on it, you have a measure that this won't break anything,
Right.
right? So those integration tests ensures that this won't break anything.
Right.
Even what you will contribute will also be accompanied by a test.
Right.
So that test will ensure that nobody else breaks what you did, right? So that is sort of the main thing, that going beyond just like OOP and like programming and like learning languages. The second thing is to understand this, like what, like the testing, the integrations, the different remote and branches and everything and so on, right?
So I would say in a nutshell, to have an hands-on experience on the real deal, on really
Yes.
actually what is happening in the project, right? So just me knowing some Python syntax would not help. I'll have to actually play around with the project to understand the methodologies and sort of everything that they are doing through
Yeah.
Python, and then learning on the way. Right.
So every time someone contributes to say PyTorch or Pandas, they have like hours of like they build the entire project again and they test everything.
Right.
So that takes like hours. And like even if you consider the frequency at which like every project is growing, And you can imagine like what sort of like how much contribution and like everything is coming in and like getting tested and so on. So you know that is necessary to ensure that things are working well, right?
Right. And so I'll just like to take a moment here and say that I know a lot of you are from first year also. So if all these terms, Git, GitHub, PyTorch, or whatever, pandas does sound intimidating, then don't worry. It's nothing like that. Feel free to ask us what they are. Like as I said, there is no question such as a bad question. So the speaker obviously talked about Git and GitHub, and the PyTorch and pandas are basically Python libraries that enable us to do different stuff. So PyTorch is a library developed by Facebook used popularly in machine learning, while Pandas is also used in machine learning.
Yeah, it is developed by PyData and like it is used for data.
Right. So feel free to ask us questions of anything that you don't understand. So, okay, moving on. For how many different organizations we can propose the different topic related to their project. So I think how many proposals can we submit?
Yes. So we have a limit of proposing 3 proposals.
Right.
It can be to any organization. It can be same organization do different projects.
And
also.
Yes, Ved. Yeah, please do ask.
If we do one project and it is better than others 3 projects, so
okay, yeah, okay, so so the thing is you can contribute to different organization and same organization in any of the 3 projects, right? And those 3 projects, any one of them will be selected. So if you are doing better in one project, then you will be selected for that. Right? Makes sense?
Does that help? Or
yes.
Right. Okay, so the answer to the question is 3, maximum 3 projects that you can apply to. Right. Okay. I have seen Open SUSE. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, OpenSUSE, Matrix, IRC, Node.js, and the code base always seems to be too huge. Yeah, and the learning gap seems to steep. How to work on that? How do I get through that phase? Is it worth it? Yeah. Okay, so like one more magical formula. Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, like, no matter what organization you pick, you won't be able to understand the entire code base in the first week, even in a month, even through the entire GSoC, right? The thing is, you have to, every project has its sub modules. Okay. Now, okay, I told you like many of you, you use libraries, right? What part of libraries you use? You know only the abstracted part. Like this is the function. This is what I have to give it, and this is what I'm going to get. You have to understand things in those abstractions itself. Okay. So you have to understand like this is sort of this module is supposed to do this part of the job, and it does it somehow, right? Okay. Now then you will have some part of the code that you are supposed to improve and like change, right? So how do you know and how do you come to an understanding what it does? The easy and very good answer to that is to look at the tests. Okay, like I said, every code, whatever is built, is accompanied by a test that ensures that nobody else breaks that thing. So that test is actually showing you how that specific piece of code can be used as on its own, right? So within the library, it will be used through layers. Like, okay, to get into using this step, you will have like 3 steps above it that will be using this function. Okay, then you will have no idea how it is used. Like that will be the problem. But when you see the test for this function, it will be about just how to use this function, right? And that is there you can get to understand like what it is.
Right.
So what I did is like I had like Python based environment, and I used a Jupyter notebook. I like specifically import that part of the code that I want to understand, and I look at the test. Okay, this is how they are testing. Like copy paste each line. and run in the notebook itself, and I can get to know, okay, like what it is. We can do similar things, and it also helps you to understand how to write test.
Yes, that's a bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, so look at the test.
So maybe now if you just want to flip through anything, let's just see if is there anything that we missed in the discussion. And
Okay, can you tell more about your project? That will be a bit too long. It has just one upvote, so
so maybe this one, can a ML beginner contribute in GSoC 2022?
so I was an ML beginner and I wanted to contribute to something related to ML, but it is hard. Like, I mean, here you are not contributing in making, maybe if you find that kind of project that is just building a model, then you're lucky. But most of the projects will be like on libraries, ML libraries. Now contributing to an ML library is like really, really hard. Like, because it is not about like you have to understand a lot of like base code like numpy and all those pandas and all those things, and like how to use those things. And like if you think about like sklearn, if you think like, okay, like what can be a project in sklearn, say you are lucky and you have like you get a chance that it is just say like this is a new method, and the sklearn project has like just implement this method. Like, you understand how hard that is.
I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
So
sklearn, guys, is a Python library again used for machine learning.
yeah.
And
So if you get like even like implementing, I don't know how many of you are good, like can you even like implement logistic regression from scratch? I don't know if anyone has did that.
right.
So if we directly use sklearn, like
Yeah, we directly
this
use
is what it is like. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Harry, please feel free to ask.
So
Okay.
I wanted to just ask the same thing, means sklearn, like we know that it's a library in Python, so there are going to be some projects related to it. So let's say I want to make a new algorithm like logistic regression from I've done one time, means it was
Yes.
pretty hard, yeah, but it's not logistic but linear regression. So there are some other models too. So can we contribute in that, being just a ML beginner, like knowing some part of TensorFlow and Python mixed together?
So I would say like it is really hard. Like, okay, so the code, the piece of code that you might have written, like, okay, so okay, okay, I will try to make you understand what sklearn does. So in sklearn, no matter what model you used, it provides you with the same interface, right? So it has a like 5 or 6 layer of abstraction before even reaching the core model part. So if you can understand that kind of complexity and like how it is abstracting things, and along with implementing something new, then you can.
So
What I'm saying, like it is hard to contribute to an ML project because there are not many ML projects, first thing. And even if so if you are get an pure ML project that is just building a model, then that's like really great, kudos to you. And all the other ML related projects and like contributing to an ML library is not equivalent to working in ML. It is like different, it is like legit. My organization, that is Open Mind, is like private AI, like it works on private AI and ensuring that AI is more privacy concerned, right? So that has nothing to do with what I contributed to it. My contribution was like Python development. And even if you like try to contribute to sklearn, regardless of knowing you are implementing a new ML method, it is still contributing Python. Like it is still Python development. So like I said, like even in earlier examples, like contributing to Django is not working in Django, but it is working in Python on Django.
On Django, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope this helps, Harry.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I have like one question in the chat, like test means
Yes.
CI/CD pipelines and or like test something else. Okay. So yeah, test are the CI/CD thing itself. But there are like, okay, like what are the differences, and I will come to that. Okay. So the first thing is like you write test, and there is always some test library that picks up all the tests. Like it has like something like, so the PyTest has something like, if you start it with the test, define test underscore, then it will pick the test and it will run that test. Okay. So that are the same thing. That is the same thing I'm referring to here. Like you look at those tests concerning those library, and you try to run every line of that test. Now, what is the difference between that and like CI/CD? Now, in the libraries, you are trying with like, you are expected that the library works across different matrices of like operating systems, different versions of Python, different base libraries, and so on, right? So that is the difference between like just test and the CI/CD. Like the CD part of it will test it in all this metrics, against all these metrics. They will test on Windows for like say Python 3.6, 3.7, 3.9, for Linux on all these three, on Mac for all these three, and so on.
Right. I hope, Monish, that helps and that has answered. Yeah.
So we have covered the
I think
first one.
this is very
Yeah.
interesting. How to reach out to organizations well beforehand and start contributing.
So every organization has their IRC, that is a channel for like communicating. It can be Slack, it can be
Discord.
explicitly IRC. I had something like Jitter or something like that when I contributed to another organization. So you have like those kind of like channel platforms for communication. So you jump into those. Okay. Three channels where you like just introduce yourself. Okay. When you're working on something, you say I'm working on this thing, and so on. Like try to get in that touch, and you will have like, these are the mentors and everything. So you can reach out to the mentors. This is what I'm trying to work on, and maybe if they have the chance to look at the proposals, then like message them privately, like this is my proposal, please have a look at it before actually submitting. So it is always like, it is even advice in the like GSoC platform itself to have to make sure your proposals is like gone through a couple of revision before you actually submit it.
Right. So a good way is to be channels and just start interacting and just start contributing.
I mean, like you have to, if you are a bit shy and like if you have, then you will have to overcome that, like just
we have to take that jump.
Yeah. Also remember that they are even from heaven. So yeah, they are very welcoming, and it's okay if you like mess things up a couple of times. Okay, so the first question, which has like 3 votes, let's do a rapid fire round.
Okay, yeah. Cool, let's do it.
Yeah, how to prepare for GSoC and which language to learn. Like we have covered like how to prepare for GSoC so far.
Yes.
There are almost like every language there, right? So if you pick the popular 3-4, okay, so you might as well be like working on and learning those languages. So it is always like, instead of picking a language to learn, pick projects that uses the language you know.
Right. And you are interested, so that everything will go hand in hand. So that for the learning and
so you also have the skills, you also have the interest and
interest. Yeah.
So it is like things that push you towards like getting your proposal accepted.
Yeah. So if someone is confused with Python and JavaScript, then this is a good analogy to look at things. So
like use find something with like Python projects or JavaScript projects.
Right. how much of technical knowledge should one have to make a meaningful open source contribution?
So I guess we covered
We
that
did.
in like the
Yeah, we did.
chat
Yeah, we
question.
did. We did talk about that. How is ranking done in GSoC?
Okay, so how are like the proposals selected, right?
I
So
think in a sense it would mean that, yeah.
yeah, so the thing is like first, uh, for half of the work is to convince that you are a capable person and you are easy to interact with and so on. Like you can actually come into the community,
Hmm.
and the rest half is to getting a good proposal, right? And if you are good with communicating, then that is like even lesser because you already have insights from your mentor with it.
Right.
The thing is like every organizations has a fixed slot of projects that they can accept,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so one thing is you try to find out if possible, and if you are that open that okay you can contribute to any project from an organization, try to find out what are the important projects from that organization. Okay,
Hmm.
first thing is, then the second thing is maybe some project is important but they did not have a good proposal for that, then it might get skipped, right?
Hmm.
So you are not uh, you are also competing for the same projects, but you are competing across the different projects in the same organization, right?
Right.
So that is the best you can do, is to convince the mentors that okay you are capable of working in it. And like this is the sort of like organizations and mentors pick the project, so it might be like if you get uh, if you are not selected for a project, it might be there are other projects which had more priorities, and then
Priorities, right.
yeah.
So since we are on the topic, how many projects does an organization ideally have? Or I think if I'm not wrong, I looked at Open Minded 2021, they just had 2 projects.
Yes, and like last time they had 5. Yeah,
Uh, uh,
2021 they had like 5 projects, right?
oh, they had 5. Oh, then it must be a year.
Before like 2020 they had like 2 or 3 projects.
Okay, okay.
So it varies from organization to organizations, and like I'm not sure how like
There is no
this
general
work,
number. Right.
but like if you think like I said, like Python project
Hmm.
has many sub libraries in it. Like you can work on like SymPy and like different Python libraries that are like core Python libraries, like scientific computing and so on.
Right.
So that is like okay. So guys, if you want to contribute to like the Python organization, check it out because it has more than like 10 12 projects, because it's had sub organizations within Python.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a something. So you can see like those organizations will have like more contributions. Can an Android developer contribute in GSoC? Yes,
Yes.
they can. There will be Android projects. You have to just find those. Should I start learning some new tech stack to contribute, or should I try to work on what I already know? Try to work on what do you already know, because apart from what you already know, there will be other factors like how you test those, how a test in say JavaScript, or how a test in Python, how to work with like optimally with Git
Hmm.
and things like that. So try to stick with what you already know will be a better choice here. And you are exploring a very giant code base, right? So if you are like not very comfortable with what you are going to work on, like the core thing, like the language itself, then it you might even find it harder to actually understand the code base. So
Right.
stick with what you already know is like the best option.
How much of the requirements did you know when you picked PySwift and thought of your project?
How much of the requirement did I know? I have to think about it, but most of it was a Python development. I knew Python, so that was a plus. Yeah, I think I have like contributed enough to like convince them that I can actually fulfill whatever the project and the milestones were there.
Hmm.
I did. So I guess I had that, but what I didn't had is I didn't know much about like integrations, and like I
Hmm.
didn't know what pre-commit was back then.
Right.
So I learned all those things, and yeah, I learned few of those while I was like selected and while I was contributing. So even that is an option. So I do understand that there will always be new libraries and new stuff to learn even after finishing everything. There will always be something new that you will have to learn,
Right.
and learning that new thing is also something that you are doing. So it is also, you can also think of it as a task, right?
Right. Fair. How important is it to learn CI/CD testing? I know most has it set up, but should one know how to contribute to it? Something.
So my point is not to learn the CI/CD, but to understand what when CI/CD breaks.
Okay.
Okay, so when you are making a pull request, it will like all like task the integration test, and like what if you have like a cross, like if you have a cross, then the maintainer is not going to look into it unless he closes all the ticks one and he has like finished the daily quota, right? So uh, like you have to make sure that what you are contributing will get accepted, unless like even if you are a mentor, what pull request will you check? Those which are passing the test, because you are sure
Right.
this is not breaking anything, right?
Right.
So that is kind of the information that you need to have. You are not supposed to like write CI/CD unless you explicitly need to, but like on an implicit level you have to understand where it is breaking. Like you should know like how to like get into it and like understand why it is breaking, and if you maybe try to be able to like reproduce the same in your PC as well.
Right. So in a nutshell, if you were to tell what CI/CD testing is, that maybe you could explain it to a lot of, including myself, who doesn't know
Yeah,
what exactly it is in detail.
so like every piece of code is tested,
Right.
but when you are testing on your system, but the library or something that you are contributing to might not be just for that explicit thing. It will be across different level of OSs, different dependency levels. Say like if you are a Python thing, then it is like different versions of Python, right?
Yes.
So when you contribute to something, it will run those tests across all these metrics.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
and it should pass all those things. That is your like it is testing the build and the development and all the tester like integration tester. Also it ensures that the code is like properly formatted. Maybe like it has some import return in some specific style, the definition and everything, like it follows some coding convention and something like that. It will also have like test that the pre-commit that I'm mentioning, test those things like 80 characters length of a line and so on, something like that.
Okay.
That is, yes, so you have like tests so you have, if you know like what the CI is testing, and if you can understand from the logs, okay, this is what the problem is, then you can fix it, right?
Right.
Okay, then something silly as this, like something a line greater than 80 characters is stopping my PR from getting merged.
Yeah.
Right.
Such a careful, pointed indentation of the code. I mean,
Yes, so they have like very specific indentation and all, so even they have like test for if you are mentioning the data types of the input and outputs.
Oh, okay. Right.
So okay, right now I don't know MyPy. So MyPy test whether you are like type annotating all the inputs and the outputs.
Oh.
So that are those things. They even have like my organization didn't have it, but I knew that they were developing it. That is to test whether the document, like the document string that I wrote, is in the same convention as it require, and what sort of functions cover those like documentation, whether all the functions has it or not.
Right. This honestly is a good realization for me, that how small things matter on a very large
Yes.
scale, and
Yeah,
how
if you think like, okay, what if something breaks? Like, how will you figure out if like nothing of this, like nothing such as like documentation and like type is given? Like you are like, how can you go through like that
exactly.
enormous code base just to figure out like someone uh named a variable and use something else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very true. So yeah, this is helpful. Can you guide a first year student to explain them all the technicalities like GitHub things to do before applying to organizations by sharing some videos or organizations on another session?
So this is some task
Yeah.
for the programming club,
Yes.
I guess.
Yes, definitely. Programming club will be up to it.
Yeah.
We did have a session on Git and GitHub earlier, but if you guys want some video links to be provided, we'll do that in the WhatsApp group that is there for the first year students. We'll be more than happy to provide you with that. So okay. Before we get to your project question, let's just take
How
this.
to engage with community apart from GSoC? Most have mailing lists and IRC, but they generally don't converse there too much.
Too much.
I like, okay, this I have seen like they talk a lot. Like, okay, in general, when you are like something like GSoC and all those event or something, when like some say a new version release is going to happen, like those are like hours where there are a lot of people there. But in general, I have seen like lesser activity,
Right.
but they have, that is, you are not seeing the activity. The activity is actually in some another channel with which you are not a part of.
Yeah. Sad
So
reality. I mean, it hurts.
yes, so the thing is like you can like sort of go from those introductory channels, like, okay, I'm interested, please add me to the development channels and so on.
Yes, right.
And then you can get into the action. Like, yeah.
But I think that requires a proof of work, as you
Yes.
have already been mentioning from the very
Yes.
beginning. Right. So for the last question, let's do one thing. Let's sort of do the Feynman technique. Let's say if you were to explain your project
Okay.
to someone non-technical, or even if technical, or someone technical like
So
me who
even
doesn't
if I have
understand
someone technical, it will be really hard to explain.
that. Right.
Okay, so what
Right.
open mind does is to ensure like the AI and the model has its privacy conserving. So what that means, like if you train a model, then all those data point might have very important information, right? And because we can sort of use the model to get from model to those like private information, we cannot work on data sets like the hospital data sets and so on,
Right.
because that is exposing those privacy information, right?
Very true.
So what OpenMind does is like uses different technologies to ensure that when you are building the model, it is building on that data without looking at data.
Right.
So that is basically what PySift is, like working on data that you cannot see.
Cannot see. Yeah.
Yeah. So what it does, it has like a, so this is one part of like say a data scientist, and this is like the data host which has a data owner. So the data scientist will have access to data here through a pointer.
Yes.
Okay, you can think of it as a C++ pointer. Okay, like it, so it has a variable that points to the original data, and every operation that you do on this pointer will change things here, right?
Yes.
Now to allow that, all the libraries, say like pandas, sklearn and so on, that you will have to make sure you wrap it somehow so that it can support this pointer thing, right? So that is why we need to integrate pandas into Swift.
Right. Understood. Right.
Yeah, I did it.
Yes.
Took me a lot of iteration.
But I think it was a successful.
Yes.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm not wrong. Just adding on to like what you said. So I also read about the open-minded organization, and also guys, if you are interested in private AI, please check out. They have some free courses if I'm not wrong. They
Yes.
have free courses. Please do check them out. And as Arpit rightly mentioned, that they believe in that privacy, and that's where their overall agenda is, that in actual life, look at things as such as democracy and whatnot. This is something that is very important and will hold a lot of value in the coming years. And it's a very interesting stuff that they are trying to do there. So yes, that's the link to the organization. And I think we come to an end of all you need to know about GSoC 2022. This was really insightful. Humble to have you with us, Arpit. Thank you for giving us your time, and thank you for sort of taking this session and making it here. We are humbled, and like personally I got a lot to learn. And thank you guys, thank you for being a part of this session. And right, thank you, thanks a lot. And as a
Okay,
request,
I mean, like everyone who are here, like you can reach me out if you need
right,
some help.
right.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe on LinkedIn or
Yes.
also through email.
I have like most of my handles are Arpit Vaghela, except
Mm.
on Twitter, which is Arpit Vaghela 921, because I screwed Arpit Vaghela. I means I didn't get Arpit Vaghela, and I already had that Arpit Vaghela account, and I misused it. Forgot the password.
Let me just paste your LinkedIn profile quickly.
Yes.
So
So
everyone
most of my handles are like Arpit, just Arpit Vaghela, all small.
right. So guys, I'm pasting the link in the chat, and if you just want to connect and explore, learn things. So I think that's it. That's the end of the session from us. We officially sign out. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot for being a part of this. It was really awesome. Thank you everyone. Bye bye. Have a great evening.